Okay, let's begin. I am Lanice Antoine Shelley, and I'll be your host through constructive, healing-based conversations designed to illuminate the adoptee, parents, and the adoption curious. We center the topics around community, mentorship, leadership, and healing, so you get a multi-dimensional view that is ultimately empowering. These are the voices who could not speak when they were young. Hey y'all, if you've seen me on Instagram, I'm in my summer glow phase and I am unapologetic about it. My hair is luscious. Fun fact, I didn't start properly treating and doing my own hair until I was a grown adult because like many Black adoptees, no one showed me how to do my own hair. And because I love you all so much, I'm going to share with you my hair secret. I'm always on the lookout for things you'd love and things that will enhance your well-being inside and out. We Unique Cosmetics sent me their Moisture Lock pomade and scalp and hair therapy oil from their Metamorphosis line, and it's so decadent, light, and nourishing, fam. This has become a hair routine staple. It has a soft lemongrass scent that people comment on when I walk by or when they're doing my hair because now I have boho locks. They also sent me a 15% discount link for you to try their products and hair tutorial service. And Unique Cosmetics is Black owned and operated by a mother and daughter duo dedicated to helping the adoptee community. Check out the link in the show notes. And this is for all ages, fam. So tell your friends. So come on, embark on a hair-loving journey with We Unique World. From interactive workshops to premium products, they're all about empowering you to embrace your unique hair journey. Because remember, all hair is good hair, especially when it's healthy. Hello, brave friends. I am Lanice Antoine Shelley, and I will be your host for When They Were Young, amplifying voices of adoptees. We'll engage with adoptees from all over the world, therapists, psychologists, CEOs, coaches, innovative leaders, and wise friends on navigating the complex nature of adoption. I will give you tools along with teachings to spur new conversations, ignite new habits, introduce you to modalities of healing, and feel nourished by the simple truth of you are not alone. I am an adoptee too. I am learning with you, educating and amplifying the voices who could not speak when they were young. Hey there, brave fam. How are you? I'm doing well. It's fall in Chicago and everywhere else in the Western Hemisphere, which makes me nervous. I normally love fall, but with this pandemic and not having a festive summer, it's going to be hard on mankind. I'm stocking up on plants personally. This week, we anchor the conversation in literature, and it feels so good to be nerding out like this. There are so many classic stories that shape our childhood, and we're going to discuss a few of my favorites and also get to the bottom of the word orphan. Those who know me know I have a heart 3 sizes too big for classical theater. I've spent many years studying Stanislavski, Chekhov, Shakespeare, Greek plays, August Wilson, poetry, Lauren Hansberry, you name it. I'm the kind of person who reads Shakespeare for fun. I love words. I also love people who have a deep reverence for mastering the arts. One of my most indelible takeaways from my time in Russia and Canada was the ferocity for which people engaged in their chosen discipline. They strove to master it. They were constantly learning and finding new ways to expand into their craft, all cylinders focused, blazing, yet adaptable to the world around them, which isn't the American way. We tend to straddle a few ideas until a shortcut appears to become a celebrity. Sorry, I threw some shade. I had to. The spirit moved me. This podcast is designed to celebrate and highlight all the many facets of who we are and illuminate what inspires us. Because, as you may know, adoption is just the ever-present undercurrent that may inform who we are, but we have oars and wind and sails to help direct us to the destination of our choice. I chose art. As we unpack these layers, you'll encounter the true depth of our narratives and what drives us. I love this conversation so much because it brings back fond memories of when I manifested a dream role in Stratford Shakespeare Festival's Macbeth, which remains to this day one of my all-time favorite theatrical experiences. It was the perfect storm of incredible theater, harmonious collaboration, and amazing script. I play a lot of high-status roles, but this role was a departure that I relished. I was a blind witch. I was Witch 3. One of the reasons I loved it so much was because of our guest today. She has played 14 years at the Stratford Festival in acclaimed roles in As You Like It, The Alchemist, King John, Pericles, Peter Pan, and many others. She was Witch 1 in Macbeth and quickly became a sister in solidarity as we frolicked on stage and pranked our fellow actors in the dressing rooms. This is going to be a good one. Please welcome Brigit Wilson. So here we are, Brigit.
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you on here.
I don't get to talk to a superstar every day, Lenise.
It is an honor and a privilege to share this space with you. Thank you, Brigit.
Thank you for the invite.
So I want to start us off with just the definition of orphan, because that's a word that I've grown to strongly dislike, because to negative connotation to it. There are a lot of words around adoption that are triggering to people, and I think orphan is one of them. But it's interesting looking at the direct definition of orphan. The first definition is a child whose parents are dead. When we look at UNICEF and global partners define an orphan as under 18 of age who has lost one or both parents to any cause of death. Some people argue that adults can't be orphaned. They have to be underage to be orphaned. At the time that I was put into an orphanage, both of my parents were alive, and one of which was around and present. Even though I was in an orphanage, was I considered an orphan? And does that define an orphan being put in an orphanage? And in your case, you don't know your parents at all. And so, but you were put in an orphanage. Is that correct?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I have a letter somewhere in my basement that is from like a foster mother talking about how much I like ice cream. So that would have been the last person, I guess, that took care of me. But I have no information about whether that home was the home I went to immediately after birth or if I was in what's called an orphanage. I do not have that story.
Yeah, it's so interesting how we define these adoption stories and how they unfold and how different each and every one of them happen to be, because you are Canadian and the system in Canada is, I imagine, vastly different than it is here in the States. And when I remember the moment when we both found out that we were both adoptees, and I feel like that was the moment where we bonded. We just were like, oh, someone I don't have to explain anything to whatsoever. Did you feel that? I hope you did.
I did. And it's interesting that since we've been talking that, I'm trying to identify what that means to me to be an adoptee. How did it define me? But it seems you're right, that anytime you meet another adoptee, that there is an instant family connection, that maybe you just get each other somehow, although the situations may be completely different. And in our case, it certainly was. But there's a kind of, I get you quality to that, which is, really wonderful, especially I think in theater, it's the kind of chosen family that, that you hope when you show up to play with someone that they want to play with you. And I find that adoptees are probably much more capable of feeling that sentiment and wanting that work environment simply because we are always looking for a place to land, to find a home. And so when you find out that someone else is adopted, I think you probably kind of get why they're doing what you're doing day in and day out. I also think that the theater is such an odd thing as I think more about myself as an adoptee. Like, to start your life, in my case, I would say that I was not abandoned, but I was denied, by parentals or maybe just the birth mother. And then I end up growing up and going into a profession where I'm constantly having to prove myself that I should be allowed to come back and play with you, that the audience has to like me. And so most of our time, we don't get the, will you come and play with me? But we get those letters of rejection, or letters in my day in the dinosaur age, but now the email that says, you didn't get the part. So why did I pick something that is so, an industry that is just so painful day in and day out? And yet I keep showing up, I'm still here over 30 years. But yeah, so it's nice when I know I'm in a room with someone else who gets, what it takes for me, for you to get up each day and put ourselves in that same place, day after day, year after year.
Well, it alleviates the narrative burden of having to explain ourselves. And as you said, finding our people, our clan, our group for which we can be our authentic selves. And it's so hard to find that. And I feel like in general, we artists are just a pool of misfits. So immediately we feel home in the fact that we are different in other circles. But in this circle, our differences are celebrated. And we can actually accept them and bring them to the forefront and possibly use them to enhance our work. What do you feel about the word orphan? How does that ring in your ear?
It sounds very, very old-fashioned. And I get that if you, like you, were actually in what's called an orphanage, I guess that's the right word to use. But I can't say that I identify with that word. It's just old-timey. It's kind of weird. And also, looking on Google and Wikipedia, I saw the same stuff you did. What is to be a half orphan? Who the heck wants to be a half an orphan? Isn't it enough just to be an orphan? Like, could you just give me that? Can I just have that? So, yeah, I mean, some of the ones that, are famous, you go, well, I don't know if you can say that Jane Fonda was an orphan because her mother was, dead when she was 13, but she still had her dad. And you know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't, to me, it doesn't sound like the same definition of probably your life experience in the first 4 years of your life. I just find it really old-timey. But I guess the beautiful thing about it is people understand to some degree what that is, right? Mm-hmm.
They do. I think thanks to Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
They understand. And I think they have a very shallow view of what an orphan is. And there's such a negative view on orphans and orphanages and that whole environment and community. And I think the last 10 or 15 years, we're starting to see more positive outcomes from these situations. We're starting to see and recognize people who've achieved a great deal. I read this wonderful book that talked about how orphans early on recognize the world as an unsafe place. And so they build in themselves tenacity and strength that the average person would not have. And I think that's true for me because I have a resilience. My sister and I, we would be dropped off at summer camps and be the only kids that didn't want to go home. Not because we disliked our mom by any means. It was just simply, we did not have that homesick, that feeling of yearning to go back somewhere that other people had. And even to this day, I don't get homesick. How about you? How did it turn up in your life being adopted? Did you ever feel homesick? Did you ever feel that bond for your parents, that yearning?
No, I knew very early on that I was adopted, and it was a source of pride, to be honest with you. I remember saying to a teacher, we had to fill something out in school, what's your name, what's your favorite color, where were you born? And I remember proudly walking up to the front of class and saying, I don't know where I was born. And she just looked at me and I said I was adopted. And it was like a point of pride, oddly. And then she just said, well, just write Barrie, which is the city that I was growing up in. So for me, it was always, I guess I liked that seemed special to me. I don't know if it was communicated through my parents that was a desirable outcome that I had been assigned to them, so to speak. So that did not bother me. My tenaciousness came out when I was defending my brother, who was also adopted, and the fact that he was on the spectrum, and I would come upon a group of kids kicking him and spitting on him, and that at no point did I not know that I was his sister, and it was my job to take care of that situation. I learned to swear very early on at the height of 4 foot nothing. I don't know. I just knew that I could cuss these kids out and they would take off, and I would diffuse the situation yet again. But I think that's when I was most tenacious was when I was taking care of someone else's best interest. When I could dig my heels in and be an advocate, an ally to someone else.
Hey, I want to share with you something that has changed my life. It's more like someone, my therapist. Why is she so important? Well, because I want to win in this life. I want to break through the carousel of stories I've compiled that hold me back, that keep me from expanding into my full potentiality. Stories of unworthiness, not enoughness, and even stories of questioning why I am here. I also want to stop dumping my unsorted feelings on the people around me and reacting with the same behavioral patterns that keep me stuck. Conversations with my therapist have made me more confident, clearer in my intention, and more centered in my spirit. That is why I am elated that we are sponsored by BetterHelp, where you can, from wherever you happen to be right now, match with a therapist tailored to your exact needs. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. Someone who you can text at any time and schedule online for either a chat, Zoom, or phone call. And if it turns out that your therapist isn't the right fit, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional cost. Visit the link in the show notes, betterhelp.com, when they were young, to get 10% off the first month. You need to click the link in the show notes in order to get the 10% discount. I want to see you win, beloved. Let's do it together. Visit the link, betterhelp.com, when they were young. Well, I witnessed you be fiercely loyal and protective while I was at Stratford, and I loved that because I think I definitely needed that because I was on my own. I felt like I was out in the heath during my time in Stratford, but with you, we bonded as sisters on the stage, and whenever we were in social situations, I felt that kind of back me up quality from you all the time, which I loved. So I can just picture you protecting your brother and feeling that sense of protectiveness, guardianship towards him.
Mm-hmm. I feel that, I would always feel that way when I went to work. Like, no one should be excluded. No one should be left behind. Nobody should be hurt by this process, and often things, I would miss things. I missed a lot of cues from you early on, I remember. And then when you finally told me what was going on, the penny dropped. I had a bad initial response, but then I had to back it up, and I knew that I had to do something. But if anyone asked me to go to bat for him, I'd be there, because that's just in my nature. That's just how I grew up. But all you had to do was ask, and forgive my slowness to the realization that you were struggling so much in the early days of being at Stratford. But I'm really about inclusivity, whatever that means. For everybody, it's different, but I want to be included in the room. I want to be heard. I want to be seen, and I want to matter to the process. And I get really angry when that isn't happening to me or to anyone else. And I get that at times there are other people in the room that have to be handed the talking stick more because of the sheer responsibility of the role they're playing. But I'm much happier in a very collaborative room. A very collaborative room is my happy place. So I do not want to see anybody struggle. I really don't like that. And it is really difficult for me to listen to other actors' stories of discrimination or bullying, the power struggle. I just am not good with that. I really don't know how to help, but I know I should. And then I have to, pack it away somewhere and figure out if there is actually something I can actively do to change the situation.
I definitely felt that collaborative spirit from you and Dee Dee. We had so much fun during those rehearsing days, even during the shows, just the silliness, the constant silliness was a balm, truly, and feeling a sense of belonging. And I think as adoptees, we're in constant search of that feeling of belonging and feeling of kinship, of, as Anne of Green Gables would say, kindred spirits. And I grew up watching Anne of Green Gables, and you did too. And we talked about this before, but I think it's warrants talking about again, about how Anne of Green Gables in that story impacted you.
Well, that's funny you say that. I mean, she is our famous orphan, isn't she? I mean, I guess I was in the movie version. Did I tell you that? Have I ever told you that?
You did not.
That was a weird experience. Yeah. I was in the Megan Follows, the second movie, and I played a nasty girl, of course. I remember doing the audition, and they were like, that was really great. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm a nice person, but I really like to play bad people. Like, I like getting to do that once in a while and get paid for it. I was like, yes. So anyway, I got to set, and I did not know Megan Follows. And really, we didn't have much time together, but I arrived with laryngitis. So the character is not only nasty, but she has a very husky voice. And you'd think she'd been smoking for 25 years. And a really bad bleached hair, and very bleached out hair. I can't remember why I did that. But anyway, the book was not that important. I have to say that my mother was a voracious reader. There were always tons of books on the go. We were always at the library every Saturday morning to get a new stack of books. I don't know. I feel like nobody sort of led me to the Anne of Green Gables. Maybe young adult fiction wasn't really a thing. Like, that was it. she bought me like a set of all those books like Call of the Wild and Huckleberry Finn and all that stuff, but not this Canadian story. That wasn't a part of my childhood. And I have never, I didn't do the whole Anne of Green Gables house like most families in Canada. So Anne came to me very late in life, simply by being cast in the movie. Mm-hmm. And since then, they've made a remake with Anne with an E, and I enjoyed those episodes. I think a lot of people didn't because it went to kind of a dark place, but I don't know. That didn't bother me. I kind of liked a backstory. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's not the audience they were going for. I'm not really sure, but I really did appreciate the new Anne with an E, and I'm sorry they canceled it. But there you have it. Yeah. So Anne is, one of the famous Canadian orphans, and she literally was, right. I mean, she was in an orphanage, like in fiction, but
yeah. In definition, she was.
Yeah, the definition, yes, she was. But yeah, Anne was not really part of my growing up. I don't know. Maybe my mother was protecting me from those stories too. I can't even say to you that as I got older that any of the I've never read Dickens. I have never read Dickens. And why? I don't know. I have seen theater productions and films, but I've never read it. So I don't know whether I avoided it. I avoided those dark stories maybe as I was growing up. I'm not really sure. But yeah, why so many orphans? What was the need to have those discussions, to examine those lives? Which gets me to the bastards in Shakespeare. Yes. And the foundlings, and the kids that are taken away by shepherds and raised by someone else. And it feels like, having done Pericles twice at Stratford, those late plays that they call sort of romances, I guess they are, that he was also really investigating bastards and bastard children and children that were raised by other people. And I can't help thinking that that there wasn't a family there that he knew about. You think about the fact that at the end of his career, they also went through a plague, right? The bubonic plague was killing all the child actors in every company because it affected the children most. But there would have been adults too, and there would have been children that were left orphans, probably, by parents who died in the plague. So I wonder if he was just trying that there was a whole new generation of what we call orphans, and he was trying to understand their stories of, being left behind or being secreted away, or, it's just fascinating to think about what he was going through. And then at the end of those stories, there's often a reconciliation, right? There's a reunion. And I wonder, too, if part of him always wanted Hamlet just to walk back out of the water and be reunited with the family, and that he wrote this out as well, So, yeah, I think a lot about those late plays, and I think a lot about, the children that were left behind. A couple of years ago, I did an As You Like It, and the role of Duke Senior was changed into Duchess Senior, which I played. And I remember, I guess being an adoptee, the story would be that the Duke was forced out of his dukedom by his younger brother and went off into the woods. He was banished. And he left behind his daughter, Rosalind. I find it hard to imagine that a mother would leave a child behind, but I got to move on from that, right? The reunion at the end for me was always very moving. And it wasn't played as moving, but it always was. The reunion of seeing my daughter again in those woods, for me, I stopped being the actor. I became Brigit. I guess the part of me that would love to have a happy ending, a happy reunion. But I don't know, like for me, I've heard so many stories of looking for parents or siblings or being found by, and more often than not, it's not a happy ending, right? Mm-hmm. And there seems to be a part of me that also wants to slow down and look at that car crash, but not actually have to go through it. I want to talk to other adoptees about their situations, and I really give them time and I listen to their stories. And it's almost like I'm trying to avoid that same car crash myself. But I still fantasize about the happy reunion, you know?
Yeah. I think every adoptee fantasizes over their reunification because we imagine that there's something better, that there's someone who loves us more, possibly. I think universal question that adoptees have about reunifying with their families. Something that I looked up that I found quite fascinating was in the United States. I know you're in Canada and this might be slightly different, but orphanages were also set up in the United States from the early 19th century, but they first were established in 1729 to care for white children. There were some conflicts between the Native Americans and the settlers, and so they had to put these orphaned kids in these orphanages from 1830 and 1850. Their groups started to pop up throughout the United States to help support these houses. But it was really fascinating also to find out that most of the children in modern day times that are orphaned are in China, Ethiopia, Ukraine, Haiti, and Congo. So I don't know if those numbers have fluctuated and why that truly is.
That's part of Canada's dirty history, right? The churches, because they felt that they should be the ones to do this, took the Indigenous kids away from their families. They created orphans. They created generations of orphans willfully. The 60s scoop. They would come in when mom wasn't at home and take the kids out and put them in. They did not call them orphanages, right? They were residential schools. And what they were doing was they felt that they needed to educate our Indigenous peoples and they needed to prepare them for modern life, that they were godless, they were heathens, they were savages. So we did that to our Indigenous peoples. And what about to the state? You know, with regards to my brother, why does the state get to ask someone with, a cognitive delay or whatever, if they would be willing to be sterilized? So, that happened to my brother. He signed the paperwork. How much did he comprehend? Who gets to say who gets to have a child? Who gets to say when you can't keep your child? Tennessee Williams plays are full of this. I love doing Tennessee Williams plays, probably because I'm adopted, but it's never the person, or certainly the character, like Maggie, can't understand why she can't conceive. And then she has this sister-in-law who's like pregnant with like the 9th kid. These plays are full of this. Who has the right to have a child? And whose womb is the right womb to grow a child in? But yes, I kind of get why churches do that and states do it. I guess they feel that they know better than the rest of us. And so they get into our wombs and they decide. It is interesting about these countries and then why are North Americans compelled to go and adopt these children? I did watch your interview with your mom, so it was good to hear her story, because you would have to stop and ask each and every one of them, why? Why did you do that? Why that country? Why that child? Why at that point in your life? But it is worth listening to. I mean, it's really important to hear why people choose to adopt. I never asked my mother why she didn't have children of her own, but she clearly wanted to be a mother, as your mother did. And she was in her 40s when they adopted my brother and myself. So I guess they felt probably the medical profession at that point would say, you're too old now. But she may have had an underlying health condition that we never discussed. But she clearly wanted to be a mother, and she didn't want to wait any longer. So terrifying for both parties, right? In Canada, you would adopt if you went through all of the interviews and people visited you in your home and went through all of that stuff. And then when they decided that you were worthy of having a child, it probably would take quite a long time. It wasn't the 9 months that your mom waited. It was probably more like a year or two. That being said, I was at the end of the boomers. So there were a lot of us. There were a lot of babies. I have a lot of horror stories of kids being adopted where they dyed the baby's hair so it would fit in with the family, and then the dark roots grew in. So my parents did the wait, and then they adopted my brother, and he was growing and he wasn't developing at a normal rate, according to my mother. He wasn't doing the marking things that are obvious for an 11-month-old, a 12-month-old, walking, talking. That stuff was all delayed. So she decided, she took it upon herself to go back to Children's Aid and just do an inquiry, because there was no information. It was basically, here's the child that we've chosen for you. And in opening his file, they discovered that his birth mother had been an outpatient at a mental institution. And he didn't present as having any issues. And I guess they were just hoping against all hope that he would not have been affected during that pregnancy. And they actually said to her, you can give him back.
Oh my goodness.
So my mother, being a lot like me, she just, this is my child. You can't even say that to me. This is my baby. I just needed to know. And then I jokingly say that eventually I was the consolation prize. I guess the file dropped on the table, and I was the person that was going to make it all better. I have no idea what they were thinking, but I can't help thinking that my brother would have been better off to have been an only child. Most of their resources, they were not wealthy people. Most of their resources went to getting him to special camps and having tutors and speech pathologists. And so, I tagged along on a lot of that stuff. I have also said to parents who have children, like they have had their own children, but one of them maybe has a learning disability or sight issues, mobility issues. And I say, pay attention to that one over there. That one that is really high functioning, that takes a lot of work to be that kid, because you don't dare cause any more trouble. So the other part of waiting is the part of the adoptee waiting to be sent back. What was the thing I was going to do that was going to piss my parents off? That maybe was the thing that they couldn't deal with, on top of everything else that they were dealing with work, poverty, and the issues that my brother had. I never misbehaved. I got good marks in school, and all my teachers loved me. I knew instinctively I had to behave. So getting away from the family home was a real exciting time, because I didn't have to behave anymore. I've more than made up for it, I think. But yeah, the threat for the parents of having the child taken away, the threat for the child to be taken away or to be sent away, to once again be discarded, discounted, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, going back to your question as to why so many orphans pop up in literature, I think it's because we as human beings are obsessed with the underdog. And who is more of an underdog than an orphan? And we like to see the underdog succeed. And there's so many underdogs in history who have made extraordinary marks. Charles V, ruler of both Spanish Empire and Holy Roman Empire, popes, a whole bunch of popes. We also have Adolf Hitler, but he was orphaned at 18, so it doesn't really count for him. He shouldn't be on the list at all. Catherine, Queen of France, was an orphan. Frederick Douglass, African-American social reformer, abolitionist, writer, statesman. That's exciting. He's one of us. Malcolm X, one of us as well. Hey, Malcolm. Tupac and Pedro II of Brazil. Yeah, there are so many orphans amongst, the ranks who have achieved like monumental things or changed the world in some Goliathian way, right? And I think it harkens back to our beginning statements of the tenacity, of the strength, the perseverance, the pushing through, the ambition, the feeling that I have to prove myself. And as you were saying, with always behaving, always feeling that there's an expiration to their love, what will set them off, send you back to the orphanage or send you back to wherever you came from. With Shakespeare, there are quite a few references to bastard, foundling, orphans, and usually they're associated with plotting, a little villainy in there too. There's an orphan in Winter's Tale, King John, Caliban in Tempest. Mm-hmm. Edmund in King Lear is, I don't know if they're orphans. They're considered, this was a time where the lineage was so important. And now I don't think it's as important at all if someone is legitimate or illegitimate in a family.
It's interesting, though, I guess it depends on each family. Going back to thinking about the two young men in Stratford upon Avon and the killing of the father, it's quite possible, like the Lear story, the Gloucester story, that one of those sons would have been known to have been the illegitimate son. Gloucester having both sons, raising both sons, was, I guess, an act of charity to take his bastard son in. But he did acknowledge him the way that Prospero acknowledges, in a way, that Caliban is her adopted child. But I just think that when you think about small towns, everybody must have been in each other's business. Like you would know who was illegitimate, who did have an illegitimate child. I don't think you could avoid that. But as I said, I think that Shakespeare he did like those bastards. He did give them power. Like, yeah, well, why shouldn't we mess around a little bit? Like, why can't we have some fun too?
Yeah.
Why do we have to behave in an orderly manner all the time? Which is, what I think I've said and you've said. You are told that, or you've told yourself you could be rejected again if you don't behave yourself. So I think I would love to play one of the bastards someday, simply because I would love to misbehave. Right? That would be so much fun. So maybe he got us too. He's an amazing writer. We just go down the list of how brilliant he was, but maybe he got that we were always supposed to behave, and he let them misbehave just because it was fun. But he wanted to understand what made you and me tick. I was just thinking too about the obsession with orphans, like in the 1700s. I wonder too if it's all that stuff about untapped potential, right? It's that's the interesting thing about showing up and doing a play or a TV spot or something is the potential to really dive into that role, to really, really feel that person is in you, that you have figured that person out. Or I used to think at the beginning of my career, I couldn't understand why actors would want to repeat a role, like at different points in their life. And I'm beginning now to realize why too, because of course my interpretation of Lady M in my 20s is completely different from, but also just that potential that adoptees just kind of know instinctively is that we have potential to be queens and presidents. I think because nobody said we can't, and we're so busy trying to get there that don't stop me. Just don't even try.
They saw a spark of greatness.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines is my partner in greatness in Macker's. I love that so much.
Yes.
Partner in greatness.
Yeah.
So what do you think, where in your life can you apply courage in the pursuit of greatness?
There's a courage that's expected of all of us, and not everyone will rise to the occasion, but the courage to sit in this thing called a pandemic, in this thing called just dysfunctional race relations that's ongoing, to sit and look at those videos over and over again, to know that there are Indigenous people in Canada who do not have running water, have not had potable water for years, to know that I live in that kind of a world, but still want to engage in it, and to educate myself and not be afraid to look those things in the face. Right now, I'm not being very courageous about a return to theater. I acknowledge that it will be very different from the theater that I was engaging with before, both as an audience member and as a performer. But I think it will take a lot of courage for us all to go back into a rehearsal hall, and I'm not sure I'm that person. I think because I haven't quite identified who I am defending. Am I defending the art? Am I defending the play, the playwright, the actor? What am I? I will, as I said before, I will fight for this, but I just need to know what I'm fighting and who I'm fighting for. But I'm not sure I will have the courage to enter into a rehearsal hall again, because I think it will take huge courage to walk back into those rooms and trust that everyone has done the work and is willing to engage. I probably won't until somebody gives me a phone call like the niece and says, "Hey girl, it's okay now." You can come back.
Well, I would love to work with you in like director actor capacity, or even actor again.
I would like that. I always want to be in a room where everyone shares the oxygen and there is respect, not only for the individuals in the room, but for the thing that we are doing, what we are creating. And I think that work is important. I think that's why Shakespeare has survived all these hundreds of years. We are a storytelling people. We want to hear the stories, and we keep retelling the stories, right? Shakespeare's stories mostly were based on other people's stories. He just rewrote it and adapted it to what was going on in his world. We really need those stories, and we'll need them more than ever when we come back from this pandemic. But I really, really hope for the industry that we get to a point where we're not belittling, we are not bullying, we are not so threatened ourselves that we can't have generosity.
Here are my reflections. 1. Reclaim your narrative. Many adoptees feel victimized and subject to the whim of the narratives others have created for them. They feel helpless when their parents parrot their stories to the public. You are not the result of someone else's charitable deed. Parents, ask before retelling or posting your child's story. Sure, you played a part in it, but where it is a triumph for you, it may reside as a wound for your child. So ask. Adoptees, you are your own person. What do you want to be called? I don't call myself transracial. I call myself interracial or intercultural adoptee. The trans definition does not resonate with me, so I have reframed it. You can too. 2. You were not abandoned. You were denied. You were denied a certain experience, but another opportunity was presented. Reframe the narrative around your story, and it will empower you. Semantics and syntax are a marvelous thing that you can harness to create a life where you hold the reins, and you can steer it any which way you choose. 3. Let's hold space for each other. In this harrowing time, we need to give ourselves and others grace. Give someone a call and say, "How is your heart today?" By our next conversation, I challenge you to call someone up and just listen. Allow them to speak and be heard. What a gift that will be to them and to you both. I love Brene Brown, and she brilliantly opined, sympathy is saying, "I see you in the dark," while empathy is, "I will sit with you in the dark." The world needs empathy right now. Okay, if you want to watch Brigit and myself in Macbeth, it's available on HD, now streaming on the Stratford website. I'll leave details in show notes below. For resources, please go to laniceantoineshelley.com or hit me up on Instagram @YoungAdoptee. Thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast. I so appreciate it. Until next we meet, go gently and have courage, my love. Another beautiful episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to my guest today. If you liked this episode, the best way to support me and this work is to write an iTunes review, a 5-star review. This helps us reach the top of searches and helps more people to find us. And if you personally want to connect, please reach out on Instagram or Facebook. And I have some great resource material on my website at laniceantoineshelley.com. So go on over there too. Until next we meet, go gently and have courage, my love.